الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وله الحمد في الآخرة وهو الحكيم الخبير والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث إلى كافة الورى شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته أئمة الهدى ومصابيح الدجى الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا وجدناه صابرا نعم العبد إنه أواب. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
In this final lecture of this series, I would like to examine the story of Nabi Ayyub ala nabiyana wa alihi wa alayhi salam and how it relates to the whole concept of patience in Islam. The questions that we will try to seek to answer this evening are, first of all, what do the Quran and traditions tell us about this great prophet? Secondly, what examples does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give to the messenger of Allah, Rasulul A'zam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when it comes to patience? Thirdly, what are the three types of patience? And finally, how can we strengthen our relationship with and defend our Imams? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So let's start with the first question. What do the Quran and traditions tell us about Nabi Ayyub? And in English he is known as Job. So what do we know about him from our primary sources? Well, we are told that actually he was of the second generation after Nabi Yusuf ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam. And Nabi Ayyub, it is said that he was a descendant of the holy prophet Ishaq ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam. And now Nabi Ayyub, we are told that he inherited a lot of wealth from his father, Amos, or Amos as is known in English. And so he had a lot of wealth with him. Now, we are also told that he married a lady by the name of Rahma. Rahma was the daughter of Ephraim. Ephraim was the son of Nabi Yusuf. And it is reported that Ephraim himself was a prophet. So Rahma was, according to these traditions, she was the daughter of a prophet, Ephraim, and Ephraim was the son of Nabi Yusuf. So Nabi Ayyub married someone very respectful, very honorable, and from a very distinguished lineage. Now, we are told also that Nabi Ayyub, he was blessed really well by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with lots of ni'am and blessings. But then at the age of 73, this is when Allah in His infinite wisdom decides to test Nabi Ayyub with some tremendous trials and tribulations. So He tests him with the loss of life. He tests him with the loss of wealth. He tests him with a loss of family. And also he is turned out of the village or the town that he is living in. Also with his health, we are told that Nabi Ayyub is inflicted with a terrible illness which he has to endure. Now this is where we are going to focus more on in the course of this lecture. For example, Shaitan we are told it is him who is the instigator of all of these trials and tribulations. Shaitan causes his house to collapse. Not just that, but when the house that he's in, his home, collapses, it crushes his children. Then Shaitan instigates this fire that burns so much of Nabi Ayyub's wealth. So we are told that this fire burns his fields, all the crops in the fields, his animals are killed. Even the shepherds who were working on the land of Nabi Ayyub, they are also killed because of this fire. What else? We are told that the people of the town, they turn him out. So he's not even allowed now to stay in his own town. And of course he's inflicted with this terrible illness. This illness which he endures for many, many years. So all of this happens. Nabi Ayyub, he endures it. In fact, we are told he never once told Allah to relieve him of all these hardships. He never once asked Allah to make these hardships, these trials and tribulations lighter for him. He simply endured. Now, this went on for many, many years. In fact, to give us an idea of how great his patience was, he actually, the more he was inflicted with all of these trials, the more he thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more he praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, we are told that when this terrible thing happened with his land, he lost all his animals, he lost his wealth. You know what he says to Allah? He says, Alhamdulillahi alladhi a'ata. Praise be to the one who gives. And then he says, Wa alhamdulillahi alladhi akhad. And praise be to the one who takes. Allahu Akbar. This is the great patience of this embodiment of sabr. Nabi Ayyub, he praises Allah the more he's inflicted. And he says to him, praise be to the one who has given, and praise be to the one who has taken. In effect, Nabi Ayyub is realizing in these words that everything that we have is only an amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is He who gives, and it's therefore His right to take away. We are just holding all of the blessings that we have, whether it be our wealth, our knowledge, our health, our experience. Whatever we have is just a blessing from Allah. It actually belongs to Allah. We are just holding it on trust for a short period of time. And then sometimes He will take it before we leave this world. But when we leave this world, it's all going to be taken away anyway. This is what Nabi Ayyub is teaching us in these words. That, oh Allah, I acknowledge and I praise you for everything that you have given me. And therefore, if you take it away from me, if you want to do whatever you wish with regards to these blessings, then still I praise you. Because I know it's all out of your wisdom and justice. Like we were examining before, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us with trials, we have to appreciate who Allah is. We have to think about His attributes. Sometimes it's a lack of proper understanding about who Allah is that we don't appreciate what's happening. If we appreciate He is Al-Hakim, He is the All-Wise, that means He doesn't do anything without wisdom in that thing. He is Adil, meaning He is the All-Just. Again, whatever He does, it must be out of adala and justice. And He is Qadir. He is the all-powerful. He can do what He wants, but He will always do it with a sense of justice and a sense of wisdom. Sometimes we understand it, sometimes we don't understand it. If we understand it, alhamdulillah. If we don't understand it, alhamdulillah. Because we must realize it's all for our best. We'll come across some examples in a moment where Nabi Ayub is taught about patience, and in fact, Rasul Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is told so much about these examples of patience from past prophets. And therefore, if Allah is teaching our great prophet the lessons of previous prophets about patience, then definitely He also wants us to learn about patience from the examples of these wonderful prophets. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this is the position when Nabi Ayub is 73 years of age, but then he is afflicted with all of these trials and tribulations for 7 years, and now he is at the age of 18. Like I said, up to now, he's not once complained, he's not once asked Allah to remove any of these trials, he's not once asked for his hardship to be lessened. But at the age of 80, he realizes that he's reached his limit. He's lost his family, his children, he's lost his wealth, he's lost this reputation that he had, the status that he had in society. He has lost even his health. Now he reaches a limit where he calls out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he calls out to Him in these words, which Allah teaches us great lessons about, from Surah Sad, verse number 41. He says, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to the Prophet and He reminds the Prophet of the example of Ayub. وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ. Remember our servant when he called to his Lord. What does he say? أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الشَّيْطَانِ بِالنُّصْبِ وَعْذَابٍ. He says that Shaitan has afflicted me with exhaustion and with torment. Nabi Ayub is totally tired and exhausted. He has been afflicted with torments and trials and tribulations. So now for the first time, he's calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell him to do? Look at the response of our great Lord when we have been patient. It doesn't matter if we call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. It doesn't matter if we reach out to Him. This is exactly what Nabi Ayub does. What does Allah respond to him with? He says to him, "Oh, our great prophet Nabi Ayub, strike your leg on the ground." Nabi Ayub does that. Immediately there's this spring that comes out from the ground. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him through the angel Jibreel that now this is a cool spring for you to bathe in and for you to have a cool drink of. Nabi Ayub bathes in this spring of water. All of his health is restored. All of those illnesses that he was afflicted with are removed. His skin, his health, everything comes back to him. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him that now take Rahma, your wife, go to your old town, the town that he was thrown out of, and you will see what we have in store for you. He goes there. When he goes there, he sees that the land that he's to own is restored to its former glory. The animals are fattened. Not just that, but now he sees his children. They have also been restored to him. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises him a few things. He says to him, first of all, we will give you another 73 years. The same number of years that you lived before you were afflicted with all these trials and tribulations. Not just that though, but we will double your children for you. This is the reward of Nabi Ayub because of his great patience in the eyes of all of these trials and tribulations. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now tells him about his name, Ayyub. Where is it from? He tells him when he mentions this verse that actually talks about 3 great attributes of this prophet. It is verse number 44 of Surah Sa'd. The same verse that I recited at the beginning of this lecture. Inna wajadnahu sabira. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we found him to be patient. Allahu Akbar. So the first attribute Allah distinguishes him with in this verse and tells us that we must also try to emulate him in is that he was sabir, that he was patient. Indeed, we found him to be patient. Then what? Ni'mal abd, an excellent servant. The second attribute Allah distinguishes him with, He glorifies him with, and He tells us that we must also be abd. But all of this is not possible without him being sabir. He was sabir, then he became this great abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then finally, he says, Innahu awwab. This is where his name comes from. That he was oft returning. What does this mean? He was oft returning. It means that because we returned him to his health, we returned his children to him, we returned his wealth to him, everything that he had lost because he was patient, we returned to him. Not just that, but we returned it to him in a greater way. This is why he's known as Ayyub. It comes from the word awwab, the one who is oft returning. Because from a tradition we are told that awwab, it is actually about his name. His name comes from the same root that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enabled him to return. Ayyub and awwab, from the same root that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enables him to often return. But another opinion is not just the returning of him to his health and wealth and children and so on, but also in a deeper sense. He is constantly returning to his Lord. This is at an even deeper level. What does this mean? This means that because Nabi Ayyub was patient, he was the embodiment of this attribute of being the patient servant of Allah. He is constantly returning. Every single moment he is getting closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spiritually. He is like he's going on this spiritual journey and he is returning. He is going back to Allah, but not just once, constantly returning while he's dealing with all of these trials and tribulations. It's the same thing with us, my dear brothers and sisters. When we are afflicted, when we are subjected to all types of trials and tribulations and hardships and difficulties, while we are enduring them, while we are being patient about them, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually enabling us step by step, every moment of our patience during those trials, to get closer to Him spiritually. We are actually developing ourselves internally. We are growing more and more. And we will inshallah see the results just like Nabi Ayyub saw the results. Inshallah in this world, inshallah in the next world, perhaps in both. But definitely we will see the results just like he blessed Nabi Ayyub with all of those bounties. Sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad. So this was with regards to the first question. What do the Quran and traditions tell us about Nabi Ayyub's wonderful story of patience? But now let's look at the second question. And that is, what examples does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remind our Prophet Rasulul Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam about when it comes to the whole issue of patience? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds our Prophet, and of course these are lessons for us as well, in the Quran about two prophets in particular when it comes to the whole aspect of patience. One, he tells him in a positive light, in the sense that learn from his example. In another one, he tells him not to follow him, but in this particular aspect of not being patient enough. How do we put these two together? That Allah is telling him, learn from one prophet, but don't follow the example of another prophet. When it comes to this issue of patience, let's have a look at this in some depth. What about the prophet where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, don't be like him when it comes to patience? And how can we put it together? At the end of the day, this was a prophet mentioned in the Quran, but Allah is saying, don't be like him. This is the prophet known as Nabi Yunus, alayhi nabiyana wa alihi wa alayhi salam, whose story we looked at a few nights ago. You will recall that he is referred to in English as Jonah. And this is a prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Qalam, verse number 48, not to emulate him. He's telling the prophet, don't follow his example when it comes to patience. So, as you will all recall, it is when he experienced this test and he left that city. Let's have a look at the verse first, and then we'll review his story secondly. In this story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet in this verse, فَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ. O Prophet, have patience. Have patience with regard to the judgment of your Lord. Whatever your Lord decrees for you, judges for you, decides for you, plans for you, make sure you have patience. Then he says, وَلَا تَكُنْ كَصَاحِبِ الْحُوتِ. And don't be like Sahibul Hud. Who is Sahibul Hud? It literally means the companion of the fish. Sahib of Hud. Hud is fish, meaning the man of the fish. The one who was swallowed by the whale. Nabi Yunus. And then he says, is nada, and then he says, وَهُوَ مَكْذُومٌ. When he called out and he was totally choked with grief. So let's review the story and then we'll come back to this verse. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell the Prophet, don't be like Sahibul Hud, the man of the fish, Nabi Yunus? Well, you will recall that in this story, Nabi Yunus for 33 years had told his people about the sinful ways that they had been taking up. He was warning them, he was trying to tell them to change their ways. And he was trying to tell them to follow the law of Nabi Musa, ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam. Out of all the people, from 33 years of striving to tell them, you know how many people actually followed him? Only 2 people. So now, of course, he's very frustrated. This gives us an idea of where this lack of patience in the eyes of Allah. Remember, we're talking about a prophet, so his standard is at the highest standard possible. But it gives us a background of how he did what he did. 33 years preaching. Nobody listens apart from 2 people. Now he asks Allah that, oh Allah, send your adhab and your punishment on these people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he accepts, but he tells him that warn the people in advance. So Nabi Yunus, he does this. He warns the people that there is this punishment that's going to come to you. So now the people, what do? they ridicule him, they mock him, they even threaten to throw him out of the city, Nineveh. So now we can understand the situation Nabi Yunus is in. At this stage, he decides to leave Nineveh. He decides not to wait for any further instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But surely we can understand the position he was in. All he does is that he leaves the city and the people. He knew there was going to be an azab there. And he had warned the people. Out of all the frustration, so many years of trying to warn them as well. They ridicule him, mock him, threaten him. So at the end of the day, he leaves the city. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects higher standards from his ultimate servants. He expected Nabi Yunus to stay with his people until he got the command from Allah to leave. Of course, this is a lesson for us all, not to abandon the people we are working with right until the last moment, until there is no other option. This is an example for us all to remain with people unless it really gets to that stage when we really can't. But in any case, at least now we get an idea. It was certainly not a sin. It was certainly not something that was a transgression of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just that the better option for him to adopt was to stay with his people. So now in any case, he leaves his people. Then, of course, you know the story which we mentioned a few nights ago. He's on that boat and then finally he's swallowed by that whale. Then out of that great repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the great regret, the expression of that dhikr, unity that we mentioned in some detail last time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells that whale to release him, and then he's delivered on that bank and he is saved. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet, فَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ, be patient with regard to the judgment of your Lord. وَلَا تَكُنْ كَصَاحِبِ الْحُوتِ, and don't be like the man of the fish when he called out to his Lord and he was choken with grief. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet and all of us that don't be impatient. Try to be patient as much as you possibly can up to the last minute. Try to exercise the patience of Ayyub. Not that level of patience, of course, like I said earlier, is the level expected of his greatest servants. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Holy Prophet about this one example. You can see, my brothers and sisters, the level that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds his greatest servants to. It is truly a remarkable level. We hold them as our exemplars, as we have been trying to demonstrate during the course of all of these lectures. They are exemplars for us in all of these attributes, including the attribute of patience. Muhammad wa Muhammad. But then with regard to the other example, who does he remind the Holy Prophet of when it comes to the issue of patience? He reminds him of none other than Nabi Ayyub. He says, وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا Ayyub, and remember our servant Ayyub. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how much He emphasizes on the story of Nabi Ayyub and learning from his example when it comes to exercising patience. Then He says, when Ayyub says those words that I mentioned earlier, Anni massaniya shaitan binusbin wa adab. Shaitan has afflicted me with exhaustion and with torment. This is when Ayyub had reached that final limit of totally being exhausted after 7 years of affliction and being afflicted with all of that torment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Holy Prophet, He gives him this comparison. Inshallah, this is something for us to always bear in mind. The comparison of these two great prophets, both at extremely high levels, but one who is able to demonstrate patience at the highest possible level. Let's inshallah try to emulate the patience of Ayyub in all aspects of our lives. Sallallahu Muhammad wa alihi. But now let's look at this in a bit more depth. When we look at the whole concept of patience in Islam, we see in the Quran some amazing instructions. For example, in Surah Al-Imran, verse number 200, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us more about patience, but in a remarkable way. He gives us actually 4 instructions in this amazing verse. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So now he's referring to all of us. He directs his instructions to all those who believe. Then what does he say? Isbiru. 1. Be patient. Secondly, wasabiru. Now, we'll have to explain what sabiru is and what's the difference between isbiru and sabiru. But it's obviously from the same root to do with sabr. Warabitu. Then, wattaqullah. 4 amazing instructions for us all to bear in mind when it comes to patience. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. If you do these things, inshallah, you will hopefully be felicitous, you will be successful, you will be prosperous. Now, what are these instructions? First of all, isbiru, that means be patient individually. So each one of us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, be patient, you and yourselves. Then we'll see the 3 types of patience in a moment. But be patient individually. But then what is sabiru? Sabiru, when we look at the grammatical form of it, it incorporates a meaning of interaction. It means with other people. So here, Allah is referring to a collective type of patience. This is where I would like to draw my dear brothers and sisters' attention to the community's responsibility when it comes to patience. In the first instance, Allah is saying, individually, be patient. Yes, fine, we all must be patient. Then the second one is be patient collectively, as a community. How does this work? Well, when we look at the Tafsir, we are told there are actually a number of different interpretations about this, but one very good interpretation is as follows. Collective patience, meaning that when you come across someone, a brother in the community, a sister in the community, who is being a little bit impatient, perhaps they've been afflicted with some musibah, perhaps there is some other type of problem in their lives, and they are being a little bit impatient, perhaps they are questioning Allah's wisdom, perhaps they are not performing the religious obligations, perhaps they are engaging in some ghibah or some haram activity, whatever the case might be, they are not being patient. Collective patience means I, who know about this, I should come up to my fellow brother, my fellow sister, and enjoin them, encourage them, and try to make them more patient about this incident that's afflicting them. So wherever one person in the community is falling short of patience, we compensate with our patience. We make up for it with our patience. We enjoin them. We encourage them. We try to help them in their situation by encouraging them to be more patient. What do we learn in Surah Asr? وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Those who enjoin people to the truth and those who enjoin people to patience. Out of all the attributes Allah could have mentioned, enjoin one another to patience. encourage them, tell them that it's Allah's wisdom, it's a trial, it's a test, it is Allah's justice. There will always be good after hardship. Tell them about these examples that we have been looking at in the Quran. The examples of Nabi Yunus, the example of Nabi Ayyub, the example of the Prophet, the Aimah alayhimus salam. Encourage them. This is what is known as collective patience. Then he says, Rab wa Rabitu. Rabitu comes from Rabt, from relationship, meaning all those of you who have faith, meaning all of us. Wa Rabitu, it means strengthen your relationships with one another. Strengthen your ties with one another. Help one another in all aspects, including defending one another. And then he says, Wattaqullah. Fourthly and finally, he says all of these things, individual patience, collective patience, strengthening your mutual relations with one another. All of these things, Wattaqullah, all have to be under the shadow of taqwa. Not that we are patient for worldly things, that we enjoin one another to patience because we want something back from them, something worldly. It will increase our status in the community, in the eyes of others. No. Even our relationships with one another, strengthen them all under the umbrella of taqwa. Have a godly niyyah. Have this God-wariness, God-consciousness. Otherwise, why does Allah end these three instructions with wattaqullah? Then he says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. If you do that, inshallah, hopefully you will attain falah. Falah is prosperity and felicity in this world and the life hereafter. This is what Nabi Ayyub experienced. Felicity and falah in this world, doubling of his children, restoration of all of those ni'am and blessings. And of course, when Allah tells him, He refers to him as ni'mal abd, and innahu awwab, the one who's oft returning. Of course, his blessings will be multiplied many, many times over in the akhirah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. So now, let's look at the third question. How can we increase in our relationships? The third question was, what are the three types of patience? The three types of patience are told to us in this famous tradition from none other than the Messenger of Allah, Rasulul Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How does he describe the three types of patience? He says, As-sabru thalatha. It's very famous, and I'm sure mu'mineen have heard this, but just as a reminder, patience is not only with regards to musibah and the trials and tribulations of life. He says that's one type. As-sabru thalatha. Sabr is of three types. As-sabrun inda al-musibah. Sabr in the face of afflictions, like we've been discussing up to now. But then, was-sabrun ala ta'a. Sabr in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have to perform wajib things, certain obligatory things, when we have to abstain from certain haram and unlawful things, even mustahab and makruh, those things which are recommended, those things which are disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it requires sabr. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us to perform the wajibat. Like for example, during the time when we have been fasting throughout the whole month. Yes, it's difficult. Nobody's saying it's easy. Or for example, we have to abstain from certain haram things. We see other people around us, they are engaging in so many things, but we are told it is haram for us. It requires sabr. It requires patience not to fall into the traps of shaitan and go into those things ourselves. So sabr when it comes to ta'ah and obedience. And then he says, وَصَبْرٌ عِنْدَ الْمَعْصِيَةِ. Sabr when it comes to sinfulness. We have to have patience when we are faced with sinfulness. Others might be engaging in it, but we must have patience so that we are not falling into sinful behavior. These are the three types of patience. Inshallah, let's try to bear them in mind. We require patience in all three types. Sabr when it comes to the afflictions that Allah tests us with, sabr when it comes to obedience, and sabr when it comes to sinfulness. Sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad. Now, it's amazing that with regards to that same verse that I mentioned earlier, those 4 commandments in Surah Ali Imran verse 200, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq salawatullah alayhi, with regard to that third injunction where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالرَّابِطُ. You recall that I explained وَالرَّابِطُ means and strengthen your mutual relationships with one another. You know what the Imam says? He interprets it in a very particular way. He says, وَالرَّابِطُ عَلَى الْأَئِمَّةِ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّلَامُ. Because وَالرَّابِطُ also means defend. So defend one another. Now, what the Imam is saying here is interpreting Rabitu in the highest way that we can do this Rabitu. It means not just with one another in the community, but the highest example, the highest referent, the highest, if you like, application of this injunction and command is Rabitu ala al-a'imma. That means strengthen your relationships with the Imams, and Rabitu, strengthen your and defend the Imams. How can this be possible? This leads us to the 4th question. How can we strengthen our relationship with our Imams, and how can we defend our Imams? Just like the 6th Holy Imam has interpreted this particular aspect of the verse. So there are a number of ways, but just with the remaining time that we have, I would like to point to the institutions that we have. The institutions that we have, things like our centers, things like Marja'iyya, the institution of Mihrab, the institution of Mimbar, the institution of Madrasa, the institution of Hawza, the institution of shrines and going for ziyarah. All of these are institutions that we must hold dear to. And these are all institutions that the Imams have tried to establish themselves, tried to strengthen, and certainly they are protecting as well. So when the 6th Imam tells us, وَالرَّابِطُ, and he says, strengthen your relations with the Imams and protect the Imams. The question is, how can I protect the Imams today? Well, one of the ways is by strengthening, protecting, and holding fast onto the institutions that I mentioned. Because these are all of the things that connect us to the Imam of the time, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faruj Sharif. Through these institutions, we are being connected to the Imam. This wonderful center, other centers, Hawza, the institution of Ziyarat, the shrines, the Marja'iyya, the Mihrab, the Mimbar. All of these things are very important, dear institutions for us. They have not come about easily. They are the result of many, many years of effort, of tears, of sweat, of blood of shuhada. And therefore, when these are being held so dear by the Imams themselves, by those who are close to the Imams, let's inshallah preserve them, strengthen them, and defend them. This is the greatest way that we can do rabitu, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed us to do. And therefore, just one instance of this is marja'iyah. Following our marja, doing the taqleed of the most learned person that we are able to determine, whichever marja we follow, but following them, abiding by their instructions. So because at the time of the Prophet and the Imams, who was responsible for leadership and guidance in the community? It was the Prophet at his time, then it was the Imams at their times. But then each one of these was martyred. They left the world. Then what? Did Allah leave the Ummah without guidance? Did He leave the Ummah without leadership? No, of course not. At the time of Ghaybat al-Sugra, the minor occultation, when the 12th Holy Imam, he appointed 4 specific representatives to act as the intermediaries between him and the people. These were responsible for taking up the reins of leadership and guidance. But then these 4 also passed away, one after the other. Now the Imam goes into Ghaybatul Kubra, the major occultation. Again, the question, has Allah left the Ummah without any guidance, without any leadership now? Of course not. What He has done through the Imams and the system that they have put into place is establish the institution of Marja'iyah. Now the leadership of millions of Muslims around the world and the guidance of these millions of Muslims around the world is on the shoulders of the Marajah. This is a continuation of Allah's system of leadership and guidance for the people. So now, let's inshallah try to hold dear, try to hold fast onto the marja'iyah and realize where it's come from and what it does and how it enables us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The final tradition I would like to leave you all with is from none other than Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman ajallallahu ta'ala. What does he tell us about this wonderful institution of marja'iyah? He himself tells us to hold fast onto it, and he himself tells us the position of the marajah. May Allah protect all of them, inshallah. He says, وَأَمَّا الْحَوَادِثُ الْوَاقِعَةِ. This is one of those traditions that we should all really try to learn, and even if we were to write it in gold on our centers, on our walls, still we would not do justice to it. He says, as for those new issues, فَارْجِعُوا فِيهَا إِلَىٰ رُوَاتِ حَدِيثِنَا. For those new issues that come about, refer with regards to those new issues to the transmitters of our traditions. The ruwat, the rawis, refer to them. Who are these rawis? We'll come to that in a moment. Refer to them for all new issues that come across. Then he says, فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ. For indeed they are my hujjah, they are my proof over you. Then he says, وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ. And I am the hujjah of Allah over them. So the Imam himself is saying, refer to the transmitters of our traditions. I ask you, who are the transmitters of the traditions of the A'immah? Is he talking about people who just know traditions off by heart? Is he talking about muhaddithin, those who are experts in hadith? It's not just them. Why? Because are they going to be able to transmit to us issues relating to new things that come across in our lives? Let's, for example, take a new issue, cloning. Is cloning allowed? What are the conditions of cloning? When is it? When isn't it? How about the so-called cryptocurrencies, bitcoins? Allowed or not? When? What if? What conditions? Are these mentioned in our traditions? They're not mentioned in our traditions. So what does it mean by refer to the transmitters of our traditions? Because they're not in our traditions. It cannot be someone who just knows traditions and can transmit them. What it means is those who are able to interpret the traditions, those who are able to do ijtihad, derive rulings from the primary sources, including the traditions, and then apply them to the new situations that we are facing. Who are these people that can have all of that knowledge, a whole lifetime of study and research and application? It is none other than the jurists. It is none other than the mujtahideen. It is none other than the maraji'. So when the Imam says, refer to the transmitters of our traditions for new issues, he's referring to the maraji'. This is where taqleed comes in. We must do taqleed of the most learned because it enables us to have hujjah, a proof on the day of resurrection. When Allah asks us, where did you get your laws from? What answer are we going to give? If we are able to give Him this answer, that, oh Allah, we were unable to derive the laws ourselves, we were unable to reach the level of ijtihad ourselves, but what we did was we referred to the person who we thought was the most learned of the time. That is going to be hujjah for us. Just like the Imam says, فَإِنَّهُمْ حُجَّتِي عَلَيْكُمْ. They are my hujjah over you. وَأَنَا حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِمْ. And I am the hujjah of Allah over them. As a summary, today we looked at these 4 questions. What do the Quran and tradition tell us about Nabi Ayyub? We saw a number of things, in particular with regards to his great patience. Then we asked ourselves that what examples does the Quran give to the Holy Prophet with regards to prophets who dealt with the whole issue of patience in 2 different ways, Nabi Yunus and Nabi Ayyub. And then we saw a number of lessons from them and from the verse in Surah Ali Imran. Then we looked at the 3 types of patience: patience in light of trials, patience in obedience, and patience with regards to sinfulness. And then finally, we saw how we can strengthen our relationship with the Imams and support the Imams and also defend the Imams by holding fast and dear and protecting and supporting our great institutions, including the institution of Marja'iyah, which the 12th Holy Imam himself has enjoined us to do. So, before I recite a few du'as, I would just like to say a few words of thanks, bearing in mind this is my last lecture in this series of lectures. I have really enjoyed my time here, and I would like to thank all of you individually and as a community as a whole for the warm welcome you gave me. I had enormous pleasure being with you, and I would like to say a special thanks to my wonderful host, Sayyid, and I know he won't be, very much in line with, these whole things about thanking individuals, but really, Sayyid, he helped me so much and he made my stay so comfortable that I really do need to thank him personally, him and his family. And I would like to pray for you all, for your prosperity. Please forgive me for my shortcomings, and I hope, inshallah, we can meet up in the future once more. And may Allah bless you all individually and as a community, inshallah. Let's pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, as we approach this blessed time of the last Maghrib of the holy month Ramadan, we ask you to protect and to hasten the appearance of our Imam. Oh Allah, forgive us and our forefathers for our sins. Oh Allah, make this not our last Ramadan. Oh Allah, bless this center and all those who frequent it. Oh Allah, enable us to develop virtues such as patience and other virtues exemplified by the prophets mentioned in the Quran. And oh Allah, enable us to always live and die with the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم سائر شهداء كربلاء خصوصا سيدي مولاي أبو الفضل العباس يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا سلطان يا أبا الحسن يا علي ابن موسى يا رضا. السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليك وعلى آبائه الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.